Imagine a house bathed in moonlight, where every creak of the floorboards hides a secret waiting to unravel. It's the kind of place where loneliness festers, whispering temptations you'd swear you'd never entertain, until one glance, one fleeting moment, pulls you toward a line you can't uncross. My name is Vanessa Harper, and this is the story of how a single month turned my world upside down, igniting a fire I didn't know I could feel. This isn't your typical tale, it's a dance of shadows, forbidden sparks, and a heart caught in a dangerous game. So, settle in, because once you start listening, you won't want to stop. It was a sweltering August evening in Miami, the kind where the air clings to your skin like a second layer. I was 39, married to Greg, a long-haul trucker who spent more time on the road than in our sprawling Coral Gables home. Greg was 47, steady and kind, but his absences left me rattling around a house too big for one. Our marriage was solid, or so I told myself. But the nights alone stretched long. The silence a weight I couldn't shake. I filled my days with yoga classes and gardening. But by dusk, the emptiness crept in, hungry for something I couldn't name. That's when my sister, Laura, called with a favor. Vanessa, Ethan's coming to Miami for a month to train for a police academy exam. Can he stay with you? His apartment's being renovated, and he needs a quiet place to focus. Ethan Brooks, Laura's son, was 24, a distant figure in my life. More a memory of a gangly kid at family reunions than a real presence. Greg, always generous, agreed without hesitation, even though he'd be gone for most of Ethan's stay. I said yes, thinking it'd be a distraction, a way to fill the quiet. When Ethan arrived, I wasn't prepared. The boy I remembered was gone, replaced by a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing green eyes and a quiet confidence that filled the room. He dropped his duffel bag in the foyer, his t-shirt clinging to muscles honed by training, and flashed a shy smile. "Aunt Vanessa, thanks for letting me crash. Hope I'm not in the way." I laughed, brushing off the flutter in my chest. "Not at all, Ethan. This house is too big for just me." But as he followed me to the guest room, I caught myself noticing the way he moved, the low timbre of his voice. I shook it off, blaming the heat, the loneliness, anything but the truth stirring inside me. With Greg away on a cross-country haul, the house felt different with Ethan there. The first few days were easy, polite small talk over breakfast. Ethan buried in study guides, me tending to my roses. But by the third day, something shifted. I was in the kitchen, prepping a salad for lunch, the fan humming lazily overhead. I wore a sundress, light and airy, perfect for the Miami heat, but maybe a touch too short. Ethan wandered in, offering to help, his sleeves rolled up, forearms tanned and strong. "Need a hand?" he asked, grabbing a knife to chop cucumbers. His presence was a quiet hum, steady but electric, and I felt it, the way his eyes flicked to me when he thought I wasn't looking. Lingering on the hem of my dress, the curve of my shoulder. I smiled, keeping my tone casual. "Sure, but don't cut yourself. Those hands need to ace that exam." I leaned across the counter for a bowl, my dress riding up slightly, and I felt his gaze, a heat that wasn't just the summer. I straightened, catching his eyes for a split second before he looked away, cheeks faintly flushed. "Lunch looks great," he said, voice a little too quick. And we sat at the table, the clink of forks against plates filling the silence. We talked about his training, how he'd been running miles every dawn, his body lean and disciplined. "You're in crazy shape," I said, half teasing. "Bet the girls are lining up." He laughed, shaking his head. "No time for that, Aunt Vanessa, just me and the books." But there was a glint in his eyes, a spark that matched the one flickering in me. I told myself it was nothing, just playful banter, but the air felt charged, like a storm brewing. That afternoon, I decided to clean the pool, a task I usually left for Greg. I slipped into a bikini, nothing scandalous, but it hugged my curves, and started skimming leaves from the water. Ethan appeared, offering to help, his shorts low on his hips, the sun glinting off his skin. "You don't have to," I said, but he grabbed a net, working beside me. Every move felt deliberate, his arm brushing mine as we reached for the same spot. His laugh too warm, too close. "Hot out here," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, his eyes catching mine. "You make it look easy. Though," I smirked, tossing my hair. Years of practice. But inside, my heart raced, a reckless part of me thrilling at his attention, at the way he didn't look away. As we finished, I dropped the net, bending slowly to pick it up, aware of every inch of exposed skin. When I stood, Ethan was staring, his jaw tight, something unspoken passing between us. That night, I lay awake, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above. The house was quiet, but my mind was loud, replaying Ethan's glances, the heat of his arm, the way his voice dipped when he spoke. I told myself it was harmless, a game to pass the time. But deep down, I knew I was playing with fire, and the thought of it set my pulse racing, daring me to see how close I could get to the flames. The Miami night hummed with cicadas, their song weaving through the open windows of my Coral Gables home. But it couldn't drown out the restless pulse in my veins. I lay in bed, the ceiling fan stirring the humid air, my thoughts tangled in the memory of Ethan's gaze by the pool, those green eyes, sharp and hungry, catching every move I made. I was Vanessa Harper, 39, married to Greg, a man whose absence left me adrift in a house too big, too quiet. Ethan Brooks, my nephew, Laura's son, was supposed to be a guest, a distraction, but the way my heart raced when I bent to pick up that net, feeling his stare like a touch, told me this was no innocent game. I was teetering on the edge of something dangerous, and the thrill of it kept me awake, daring me to step closer. Morning brought no relief. The sun blazed through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the counter where I brewed coffee, its bitter aroma grounding me. Ethan was out running, his routine as disciplined as his focus on the police academy exam. I tried to focus on my yoga mat, stretching in the living room, but my mind drifted to him, his tanned arms chopping cucumbers, the flush on his cheeks when I teased him. Greg was halfway to Texas, his trucker life a world away, and the house felt like a stage, Ethan and I the only players. When Ethan returned, his shirt damp with sweat, he grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, his presence filling the kitchen like a storm cloud. "Good run?" I asked, leaning against the counter, my tank top loose but clinging in the heat. "Yeah," he said, wiping his brow, his eyes flicking to me before settling on the floor. Trying to stay sharp, there was a tightness in his voice, a crack in his usual calm, and I felt it, the spark from yesterday, still smoldering. I smiled, testing the waters. "You're doing great, Ethan. All that training's paying off." I reached for a peach from the fruit bowl, letting my fingers linger, my movements slow. His gaze followed, a beat too long, and I knew I had him, caught in the same pull I felt. "Want one?" I offered, holding the peach out, my voice light but laced with something else. He hesitated, then took it, his fingers brushing mine, a jolt that made my breath catch. "Thanks, Aunt Vanessa," he said, but his tone was low, almost strained, like he was fighting something inside. The air between us crackled, and I wondered how much longer we could dance around this. That afternoon, I decided to push further. I was watering the roses in the backyard, the hose spraying a fine mist that cooled my skin. I wore a sundress, vibrant red, the kind that hugged my curves and fluttered in the breeze. Ethan was studying on the patio, books spread out, but I caught him glancing over, his pen still. "Need a break?" I called, turning the hose playfully, letting a few drops splash near his feet. He laughed, standing, his shorts showing off legs strong from running. "Your trouble, you know that?" he said, but his grin was warm, his eyes lingering on the dress, the way it clung to my damp skin. "Trouble's more fun," I shot back, arching an eyebrow. I handed him the hose, stepping close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. "Your turn." Our hands brushed as he took it, and I didn't pull away, letting the moment stretch, the mist settling on us both. He sprayed the roses, but his focus was on me, his voice dropping. "You always this bold, Aunt Vanessa?" I tilted my head, a slow smile spreading. "Only when I'm inspired." The words hung heavy, a dare, and I saw it, the way his jaw tightened, the flicker of desire he couldn't hide. He turned the hose off, but the tension stayed, thick as the Miami heat. That night, Greg called, his voice crackling through the phone. Tired but cheerful. Miss you, Ness. Be home in a few days. I murmured the right words. But my mind was elsewhere. Replaying Ethan's glances. The way he'd said trouble. After hanging up, I slipped into a silk camisole. Short and soft, telling myself it was just for comfort. But when I passed Ethan's room on my way to the kitchen for water, his door was cracked open. And I heard his voice. Low and urgent. On the phone. She's driving me crazy. Man, I know it's wrong. But I can't stop thinking about her. My cheeks burned. A rush of heat flooding me. He was talking about me. His words a mirror to the reckless thoughts I'd been wrestling. I should have walked away. But I lingered, hidden in the hallway's shadows. My heart pounding. When he hung up, I knocked softly. My voice barely a whisper. Ethan, you okay? He opened the door, startled. His hair mussed. Wearing only a pair of gym shorts. Aunt Vanessa? Yeah, just couldn't sleep. His eyes widened, taking in the camisole, the way it barely skimmed my thighs. The air between us was electric. A current I couldn't ignore. Me neither, I said, stepping just inside, close enough to smell the clean sweat on his skin. Thought I'd check on you. I let my hand graze his arm. A feather-light touch, and saw his breath hitch. His eyes darkening with something raw. I'm fine, he said, but his voice was rough. Like he was holding back a tide. You shouldn't be here. Vanessa. I tilted my head, my smile teasing. Why not? Just making sure my favorite nephew's okay. The word nephew felt like a lie. A flimsy shield against the truth. I stepped closer, the space between us shrinking. And his hand twitched, like he wanted to reach out but didn't trust himself. He swallowed hard, his gaze locked on mine. You know why. The words were a confession. A crack in the wall we'd both been building. I could have backed away, ended it there, but the thrill, the power of his want, my own, kept me rooted. I leaned in, my voice a whisper. Maybe I do. Then I turned, leaving him standing there, his breathing uneven, the door still open behind me. Back in my room, I collapsed onto the bed, my skin buzzing, the line between right and wrong blurring with every heartbeat. I was playing a dangerous game. And I wanted to see how far it could go. The echo of my own words, maybe I do asterisk, followed me back to my bedroom. A taunt that burned hotter than the Miami night. I collapsed onto the sheets. The silk camisole clinging to my skin. My heart racing with the thrill of Ethan's confession. His raw you know why still ringing in my ears. I was Vanessa Harper, 39. Married to Greg, a trucker whose absence had left me chasing shadows in our Coral Gables home. Ethan Brooks, my nephew, Laura's son, was 24, a man whose green eyes and quiet strength had unraveled me. I'd spent weeks teasing him, pushing boundaries, reveling in the power of his want. But now, standing on the edge of something irreversible, the game felt less like a thrill and more like a reckoning. Sleep was impossible. The ceiling fans hum a mocking rhythm to my thoughts. I'd wanted to feel alive, to fill the void Greg's absences left. But Ethan's desire, mirroring my own, threatened to consume everything. By dawn, the house was still. Ethan's door closed, but the tension lingered, a current running through the walls. I dressed in a loose blouse and jeans, trying to reclaim normalcy. But when Ethan emerged for breakfast, his gaze was different, guarded, conflicted, like he'd wrestled with the same demons I had. Morning, he said, grabbing coffee, his voice tight. You sleep okay? Barely, I admitted, stirring my oatmeal, avoiding his eyes. You? He shrugged, leaning against the counter, too close for comfort. Kept thinking about last night. What you said. His words hung heavy, a challenge I wasn't ready to meet. I set my spoon down, my pulse quickening. Ethan, we were caught up in the moment. It's not real. But even as I spoke, the lie tasted bitter. The heat between us was real, dangerously so, and denying it only sharpened the ache. He stepped closer, his voice low. Not real? Vanessa, I've been trying to focus on my exam. But all I see is you. That dress. That smile. You're driving me insane. His honesty was a spark, igniting the reckless part of me that wanted to lean in, to let the fire burn. I stood, putting the table between us. This is wrong. Ethan, you're my nephew. Greg's coming home soon. We can't, my voice cracked, betraying the war inside me. I wanted to stop, but the thrill of his attention, the power I held, kept pulling me back. He nodded, jaw tight, but didn't argue. I know, I'll keep my distance. But his eyes said otherwise. And when he left for his morning run, the house felt emptier, the silence accusing. Greg returned that evening, his truck rumbling into the driveway, his familiar laugh a jolt of reality. Over dinner, he talked about the road, oblivious to the undercurrent between Ethan and me. Ethan was polite, distant, but every glance we shared was a secret, a pulse of danger. When Greg stepped out to take a call, Ethan leaned close, his whisper barely audible. I'm trying, Vanessa, but you're making it hard. My breath caught, a flush creeping up my neck. Stop, I hissed, but my voice lacked conviction. The thrill of his defiance, the way he challenged my control, was intoxicating. I should have ended it there. But I didn't. With Greg home, I tried to focus on him. But Ethan's presence was a constant pull. One afternoon, while Greg napped, I was folding laundry in the living room, wearing a tight tank top, when Ethan walked in, fresh from a shower, towel slung low on his hips. Need help? He asked. His tone casual but his eyes anything but. I smirked, folding a shirt slowly. You're bold. Offering help half-dressed, I stepped closer, letting my hand brush his arm. A deliberate tease. His breath hitched, and for a moment, we stood frozen, the air thick with possibility. Then Greg's voice boomed from the hallway. Ness, you seen my keys? And we sprang apart. My heart pounding. Ethan muttered an excuse and left. But the near miss only fueled my recklessness. That night, with Greg asleep, I slipped into a sheer nightgown and knocked on Ethan's door, my pulse a wild drum. Can't sleep, I said when he opened it, his bare chest gleaming in the moonlight. He stared, his resolve crumbling. Vanessa, we shouldn't, but I stepped inside, closing the door, my voice a whisper. Just tonight, Ethan, no one has to know. The line snapped, and we collided, a rush of heat and forbidden want. His hands on my skin, my name on his lips. It was reckless, wrong, but in that moment, it was everything. The next morning, guilt crashed over me like a wave. Ethan was quiet at breakfast, his eyes avoiding mine, and Greg's cheerful chatter felt like a mockery. When Greg left for another trip, the house was ours again, and Ethan's gaze was bolder, hungrier. We fell into a dangerous rhythm, stolen moments, whispered promises, each encounter pushing us further from reason. But the thrill was fading, replaced by a gnawing fear of what we'd unleashed. One evening, Laura called, her voice bright. Ethan aced his exam. He might get a job in Miami. Could he stay longer if he does? My stomach dropped, the fantasy shattering. This wasn't a game anymore, it was a secret that could destroy us. That night, I found Ethan in the backyard, staring at the stars. We need to talk, I said, my voice trembling. He turned, his expression wary. I know, it's gone too far. Hasn't it? I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. It was a mistake, Ethan. I was lonely. You were hurting. But this can't continue. If you stay in Miami, we need boundaries. Greg, Laura, they'd never forgive us. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I didn't mean for this. Vanessa, you made me feel alive again. But you're right, we have to stop. His voice was steady, but his eyes were raw, mirroring my own regret. I reached for his hand. A final touch. You're stronger than this, Ethan. We both are. Let's keep this a memory. Nothing more. He nodded, and we stood in silence, the stars above indifferent to our fall. Ethan left the next week, his exam success a bittersweet farewell. He texted once, saying he'd taken a job in Tampa, not Miami, a choice I knew was for us both. I told Greg Ethan might visit someday. My voice steady, the lie a weight I'd carry alone. The house was quiet again, but the emptiness was different now, tinged with lessons hard-learned. I'd chased a spark to feel alive, but it nearly burned everything down. Now, I faced the truth. Some lines, once crossed, change you forever, even if no one else knows. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our exciting stories.